Hi there! In this episode, I will show you a few ways to debug dependency loading via dry container in Hanami applications by making use of one of my recent setbacks. In episode 9, I showcased a complete integration of persistence layer in Hanami 2 applications to deliver blog articles data read from my DB straight into the browser. However, there was a mistake hidden in this tutorial that started to haunt me right after the release of the next Hanami alpha version, as it caused incompatibility issues with what I've shown in the tutorial. There is a risk that some of my content become outdated quickly until official Hanami 2 is released, but it's a risk I had consciously taken to help existing Hanami developers start earlier. However, to minimize such situations, I'm currently releasing more videos about dry libraries, which are a bit more safe for me to cover. While this is a normal risk when releasing tutorials about alpha versions, or rather about anything what happens in the web development, this particular bug was caused because of my incomplete understanding of the repository pattern in Ruby. So right after realizing that, I did some research, and to my surprise, I was not the only one who didn't get the concept in a full shape. In this episode, I will explain where the problem came from, and we will dig a little bit into loading dependencies using application container. I will make a detailed explanation of a repository pattern and how it's done in Hanami as part of my Hanami Mastery Pro version, but for now, let's focus on the dependency injection part. As Hanami uses ROM as the ORM of choice, all patterns and the conceptions of the persistence in Hanami are directly related to ROM concepts. This is cool as it reduces the overhead of learning the intermediate DSL, and we can just rely directly on ROM's amazing documentation to do anything it provides. Therefore, in Hanami, we have relations and repositories. What I did in the initial integration of ROM was placing repositories next to relations in the lib sandbox persistence folder, and this was the core problem. A repository is a bridge between persistence layer and application logic in your application. For example, you can have multiple slices in your application accessing the same database table. In this case, each of our slices would have a separate repository providing a clean interface to fetch only data the specific context is interested in. Therefore, repositories belong to the business part of your application, and it's recommended that you define multiple repositories in different slices which use the same relations to receive some data. Relations, on the other hand, are definitely a part of the persistence logic. In short, those are more or less definitions of your table schemas and possible associations to reflect what you have in your database. You may define their very common queries, but queries specific for the given use case will definitely be placed within repositories. In occasion of work on Hanami 2 Alpha 3 release, Tim Riley did an extraordinary contribution to Dry system, improving it in a way that made possible flattened directory structure. You may read more about this amazing feature he added in his open source update article for September 2021. Then several improvements had been applied, and as a result, repository loading started to be more strict and dump resilient, ensuring that people will place them in a proper place by default. Therefore, let's fix my implementation. I have here my repository placed in a general lib folder inside of my apps and persistence namespaces. I will now move those into the main slice, simplifying the namespace a bit by making use of the flattened file structure provided by the Dry system now. Notice that now my repositories don't have the persistence module anymore, and my app namespace had been replaced by the name of the slice. Finally, let me visit my actions and fix the repository loading. As I skipped the persistence folder, I can now remove it also from here. Then, as I moved it to the current slice, I don't need the application namespace anymore neither. Now my code is much cleaner and makes much more sense. And, more importantly, it works without issues. Before I will wrap up this episode, let's take a quick look at the container debugging. Loading dependencies by using a container is an extremely powerful thing. It can speed up test suites like crazy and allow for dependency injection without a hassle. However, if you don't know the exact key your dependency is accessible by, it might be a little bit confusing at the beginning to use it, so it's useful to know how to find loadable components. In the Hanami console, I have the access to the container object right away, and it returns the general applications container where all our configuration stuff lays in. To preview all the dependencies loaded by the container, I can use the keys method on it. However, it returns only one key for now. In the development environment, all files are by default lazy loaded by the container, which means that they are only loaded when they are needed. This is why, if I will ask container what it loaded, he will return minimal number of dependencies used when starting the console. As soon as I will try to access for the first time the dependency not loaded yet, container will load it and instantiate it properly, resolving all objects required by it. This feature allows for Hanami console to be always extremely quick, and the same applies to different test runs, no matter how much your app grows. However, it's useful to preview all loadable deps to quickly find what we need. I can force the container to load everything at once by calling finalize method ending with bank on it. Now checking the loaded dependencies again will result in all components properly loaded. With this, you receive a complete control over loading dependencies. However, here you still can't see your repositories, can you? It happens because each slice has their own container, independent of each other. With this, you may have different processes on separate pods running different parts of your system without loading all your codebase to the memory, which is another huge benefit. To access the main slice container, I just need to call it. To launch the Hanami console, nothing from the main slice is needed. So the container returns empty dependencies loaded. I can load necessary objects on demand, or force dependencies to be loaded at once, exactly like with the general application container. As you can see, Slices container has access to everything from the application container, and to access it, you just need to prefix the required dependency with application prefix. For example, if I want to use logger in my action, all I need to do in my file would be include dependencies with application logger. There might be a situation, however, where you want to just load everything from all slices and just don't care. You can easily do it by manually booting your Hanami application. As my application is named Sandbox, my code would look like this. Dry system and dry container are extremely powerful tools, and if you understand how to work with them, you will never look back. Because of the amazing control they provide, and loading always minimal set of files to perform a single task, test-driven development becomes enjoyable again. You might have always fast test suites during the development, extremely performant rake tasks, and optimized pods for production environment. That's all for today. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and that, as always, you will get learnings from my mistakes. If you want to see more content in this fashion, subscribe to my YouTube channel, newsletter, and follow me on Twitter. I want to especially thank my recent sponsors, Andrzej Krzywda, Sebastian Chybar, and Useo for supporting this project. I really appreciate it. By helping me with a few dollars per month creating this content, you are helping the open source developers and maintainers to create amazing software for you. And remember, if you want to support my work even without money involved, the best you can do is to like, share, and comment on my episodes and discussion threads. Help me add value to the open source community. If you know other great gems you wish me to talk about, leave a comment with #suggestion and I will gladly cover them in the future episodes. As usual, here you can find 2 of my previous videos. Thank you all for supporting my channel, you are awesome, and have a nice rest of your day.